The cold breeze of October 12, 1970, rolled through the quiet town of Elmridge like a warning. It was the kind of morning where fog clung to the ground, hugging fences and crawling under doors, casting a strange hush across the neighborhood. Birds didn't sing. Dogs didn't bark. And in the small white farmhouse on the edge of town, Lily Carmichael stirred from a restless sleep. Her dreams had been filled with crying, sharp, high-pitched wails, 4 of them in a horrible harmony she couldn't shut out. But now, as she blinked her eyes open and pushed her hair from her face, it was the silence that struck her the hardest. The nursery was too quiet. Lily sat up abruptly, the familiar creak of the old mattress louder than usual. Beside her, Alan Carmichael still slept, his face pressed into the pillow, unaware of the chill that crept into the corners of the room. They had lived in this house for 6 years. It was a home full of love and small miracles, especially the miracle of their quadruplets, born against all odds just 7 months prior. Sarah, Benjamin, Lucy, and Daniel. 4 perfect babies, each with distinct personalities already. Their cries, their coos, their midnight feedings. Those had become the rhythm of Lily's life. But now nothing. She slipped out of bed and pulled on her robe, her heart beginning to race. As she stepped into the hallway, the floorboards beneath her bare feet felt colder than ever. The old grandfather clock downstairs ticked faintly in the distance. Tick, tick, tick. The world felt suspended in those moments before she opened the nursery door. What she saw inside would fracture her forever. The room was immaculate. Too immaculate. The cribs, 4 of them, spaced evenly in a tight square, were all empty. No blankets strewn about, no rattles lying on the floor, no signs of a struggle. Just 4 vacant cribs, perfectly made, as if the babies had never existed at all. Lily's mouth opened to scream, but no sound came out. She stumbled backward, crashing into the doorframe, her robe snagging on the latch. It didn't make sense. They had been here just hours ago. She had fed them at midnight, rocked Daniel to sleep with a lullaby that still rang faintly in her ears. Where were they now? She finally managed a sound, a broken, raw cry that summoned Alan from bed. His heavy footsteps came thundering down the hallway. "Lily? What's wrong?" he said, rubbing his eyes, but when he followed her pointing finger into the nursery, all color drained from his face. The next few minutes became a blur. Alan searched the house, every room, the cellar, the backyard, but there was no sign of the babies. No broken windows. No doors ajar. No muddy footprints or torn screens. The front door was locked. The back door had been bolted from the inside. It was as if the quadruplets had vanished into thin air. Lily was inconsolable. When the police arrived after Alan's frantic 911 call, they too were baffled. Officers combed the house, dusted for fingerprints, even brought in dogs. Neighbors were questioned. No one had seen anything unusual. No cars had driven by in the dead of night. No suspicious figures reported. No evidence at all. Just 4 missing infants, a devastated mother, and a mystery that would soon devour Elmridge like a sickness. News of the disappearance spread quickly. Reporters swarmed the house, broadcasting theories and wild accusations. Rumors flew. Some whispered about Alan's past in the military. Others blamed Lily's postpartum struggles, insinuating that she had done something unthinkable in a fit of despair. But the evidence, what little there was, pointed to nothing. No ransom note, no known enemies, no motive. And as the days turned to weeks, and then months, the trail went cold. Lily, once the warm-hearted young woman who baked bread for neighbors and volunteered at the church, began to fade into a shadow. She stopped smiling. She stopped speaking to friends. Even Alan couldn't reach her anymore. She spent her days in the nursery, rocking in an empty chair, staring at the cribs as if waiting for the babies to reappear. Every creak in the floor made her jump. Every knock on the door raised false hope. Alan, meanwhile, took up drinking. Not heavily, just enough to numb the hollowness inside. He threw himself into work, trying to outrun the grief that clung to him like a second skin. But at night he lay awake, haunted by guilt and helplessness. They had taken every precaution, locks, alarms, nightlights, everything, but somehow their children had been stolen from under their roof. The town of Elmridge tried to move on. A plaque went up in the local park with the names of the quadruplets, a gesture of sympathy that only deepened Lily's sorrow. Time dulled the urgency of the mystery, but for the Carmichaels it never truly ended. Birthdays came and went. Lily would bake 4 cakes each year, place them on the table, and sit in silence until the candles melted down to puddles. Her friends stopped calling. Most people thought she had lost her mind. Maybe she had. But even as 20 years passed and the world changed around her, Lily never let go of one unwavering belief that her children were alive somewhere. She could feel it deep in her bones, a pull, a maternal thread that time could not sever. She didn't know who had taken them or why, but she knew this. One day, somehow, she would see them again. And on a gray morning in April 1990, when a worn envelope with no return address arrived in her mailbox, Lily Carmichael's world shifted once again. The letter sat on the kitchen table like a ghost, pale and heavy with unspoken weight. Lily stared at it for what felt like hours, her trembling fingers hesitant to even touch the paper. The envelope was aged, cream-colored with frayed corners, as if it had traveled through time itself. Her name was written in careful script, but there was no stamp, no return address, no postmark. Someone had placed it directly in her mailbox. Someone who knew exactly where to find her after all these years. Alan had already left for work. He still worked the same job at the local auto garage. A quiet man with shoulders that stooped more each year, weighed down by invisible grief. They rarely spoke of the past now. Talking about the babies had become like picking at an old scab. There was no healing underneath, only pain. Lily finally broke the seal of the envelope. Her fingers shook as she unfolded the letter, the paper whispering as it opened. The handwriting was neat but unfamiliar, and the message was short, just 3 sentences. They are alive. I have seen them. Meet me where the orchard once bloomed. Her breath caught. Her heart thundered so loudly in her ears she almost didn't hear the last part. Midnight. Come alone. She read it again and again, each word sinking deeper into her chest. Could this be a cruel prank? Had someone broken into her memories just to torture her? But no, there was something in the wording that made her freeze. Where the orchard once bloomed. That wasn't something a stranger would know. That orchard had been bulldozed in the mid-70s, but it was where she used to walk when she was pregnant. Where she had whispered dreams of the future into the breeze while rubbing her swollen belly. She hadn't told anyone about that, not even Alan. By the time the clock struck 10 that night, she had already made up her mind. She put on her thick coat, grabbed a flashlight, and slipped out the door. The air was bitter, and the wind carried a chill that bit into her skin, but she didn't falter. Her boots crunched over the gravel road as she made her way to the edge of town. Past the old mill, past the creek that ran dry in summer, until she reached the hill where the orchard once stood. The trees were gone now. In their place was a barren stretch of land, wild grass swaying like ghosts in the moonlight. But Lily knew the spot. She could still see them, rows of apple trees in her mind, the scent of blossoms that used to perfume the air. She stood there waiting, gripping the flashlight tightly. Midnight came. The wind died. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Not hurried. Not heavy. Measured. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in a long coat, their face hidden under a wide-brimmed hat. Lily took a step back, but didn't run. Who are you? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The figure removed the hat. It was a woman. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes, they were fierce, alert, almost defiant. My name is Marnie, she said. I worked at West Haven in 1970. Lily's mind reeled. The orphanage? That place was shut down decades ago. Yes, Marnie nodded. Because of what happened. Because of what was done to your children. Lily's breath hitched. What are you talking about? What happened to them? Are they alive? Marnie didn't answer right away. She looked out over the dark field as if trying to piece together memories buried under layers of silence. I couldn't stop it, she whispered. They brought them in, not through normal channels. No paperwork. No birth records. Just dropped off. And they said if we asked questions, we'd lose everything. Who? Lily stepped forward, eyes wide. Who brought them? Men in suits, Marnie said. Government types. But not just any agency. Something black, something deep. I only heard whispers. Experiments. Training. They said the children were special. For of a kind, genetically unique. Born under a rare convergence. I didn't understand it then. I do now. Lily's knees buckled. She dropped to the ground, her hands sinking into the cold earth. They took my babies for experiments? Marnie crouched beside her. I only caught glimpses. A hidden facility. A program called Aurora Echo. They were trying to enhance cognition in children. Psychic studies. Isolation. They never knew they had a mother waiting for them. Tears streamed down Lily's face. The grief of 20 years erupted all at once, boiling over in waves that shook her to the core. Why now? Why tell me now? Marnie pulled something from her coat, a photograph. It was grainy, black and white, but Lily could see them. 4 teens standing in a corridor, expressionless. A boy with Alan's eyes. A girl with Lily's cheekbones. Another girl with Lucy's dimpled chin. A boy with Sarah's curls. Her babies. Not babies anymore. They're out, Marnie said. The project collapsed 5 years ago. Some escaped. Others were moved. I found this photo in a decommissioned file. I've spent years trying to find you. Lily clutched the photo, sobbing. Where are they now? Are they safe? Marnie looked away. One is in Kansas. The others, I'm not sure. But I think they're looking for each other. And for you. Lily stood, her hands trembling. The truth was more than she could bear. But it was truth nonetheless. Her children were alive. Scattered. Damaged. But alive. As she walked back home, clutching the photo to her chest, she knew everything was about to change. She wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. She was a seeker, a hunter, a mother on a mission. And nothing, no agency, no secret, no shadowy past, was going to stop her now. The wind howled as Lily sat by the kitchen window, staring out at the skeletal trees bending under the night sky. The photograph lay on the table, already beginning to curl at the corners from how many times she had clutched it, studied it, wept over it. Her mind replayed every detail Marnie had told her, like a scratched record skipping on a painful loop. Aurora Echo. Government suits. Psychic experiments. Her quadruplets stolen in the night and raised like specimens in a hidden facility. 20 years of mourning, of candles lit for ghosts that were never dead, had suddenly transformed into the beginnings of something terrifying and urgent. They were alive, but damaged, hunted maybe, and they might be looking for her. Lily didn't sleep that night. Instead, she began pulling out everything from the attic that she had saved. Old newspaper clippings, missing posters, hospital discharge forms, her journal entries from 1970. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope, even if that hope was laced with dread. She needed help, but not from the police, not again. She had learned her lesson 2 decades ago. This wasn't a missing persons case anymore. This was something darker, something buried in the rotten roots of America's forgotten past. The next morning, she made a decision. She called Alan. He hadn't lived with her for over a decade, not since their marriage quietly cracked under the weight of unanswered grief. But he had never stopped loving the children either, and she knew this news would either shatter him or spark something deep inside. Hello? His voice rasped when he answered, surprised to hear from her. I know what happened to them, Lily said without pause. I have proof. There was silence on the line. Then, a sharp breath. I'm coming over. When Alan arrived, older and thinner, his eyes still carried the same shadow they had since that cursed morning. Lily handed him the letter, then the photograph. He sat down slowly, blinking, breathing heavily. The silence was long, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. This can't be a hoax, he said finally, his voice cracked with emotion. I see Benjamin's jaw. And Sarah's hair. Lily nodded. We're going to find them. All 4. Alan looked up at her, something flickering behind his tired eyes. Then we'll need to go back. To where it all started. 2 days later, they arrived in northern Wyoming. The town was called Pinehelm, a shadow of a community nestled against the base of cold mountains and thick forests. It wasn't on any major map, but according to Marnie's notes, it was the site of one of Aurora Echo's last known safe houses, something between a medical wing and a training center. It had been disguised as a children's hospital back in the 70s, but had long since been abandoned. Locals didn't speak of it. In fact, when Lily asked around, most people simply said, that place up the hill? Don't go near it. Bad things happened there. With a flashlight, a compass, and an old map, Lily and Alan followed the trail into the dense pine forest. The deeper they walked, the quieter everything became. No birds, no squirrels, just the occasional snapping twig underfoot and the wind sighing through the trees like someone exhaling secrets. The facility, when they reached it, was a squat concrete structure mostly swallowed by moss and vines. Its windows were shattered, the metal doors rusted, but the air around it felt wrong, charged like electricity waiting to explode. They stepped inside. The air was musty and cold, carrying the scent of old chemicals and decay. Long hallways stretched into darkness, lined with peeling paint and broken gurneys. Graffiti covered the walls, some of it recent, but some of it eerily childlike. Stick figures, spiral symbols, strange phrases like, "The four are one and echoes don't die." They moved cautiously through the facility, Alan with a crowbar in hand, Lily holding a flashlight that flickered with every step. Then they found it. A locked room at the end of the east wing. The door was marked with a faded metal plaque, Room 14, Behavioral Observation Unit. Alan forced the door open with a heavy push. Inside was a room frozen in time. For small cots, bolted to the floor. A cracked mirror. Cabinets with files that had long since molded over. But one wall was covered, scratched with hundreds of tallies, grouped in clusters of 4. The tally marks. 27 sets of them. Lily's knees went weak. That was their age. Each tally stood for a week, a month, or a test. Alan opened a cabinet and pulled out a half-burnt file labeled Subjects 4A 4D. Designation, the Synergy set. He read aloud. Subjects exhibit heightened empathy link, shared sensory memory, and synchronized dream patterns. Further experimentation required. Emotional manipulation produces highest yield in combined psychic resonance. Lily's hand flew to her mouth. They were using them against each other. Alan turned the page. A black and white photo was stapled to the corner, same children, younger now, maybe 6 or 7, strapped to chairs with wires taped to their heads. Their faces were blank, but their eyes screamed. Below was a faded name scrawled in red ink, Project Overseer, Dr. Hellman Rusk. Lily whispered. That name, I've heard it. He was in the news once. Disappeared. No charges ever stuck. Before they could look further, the flashlight flickered violently. A soft thud echoed from down the hallway. Then another. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Alan motioned Lily behind him. Someone's here. They backed out of room 14, creeping down the corridor as the footsteps grew louder. Shadows moved near the far end of the hallway. Then, a voice. A whisper, barely audible, almost childlike. Mom! Lily froze. Her heart surged. The shadow stepped forward, revealing a young man, maybe 20, with jet black hair and haunted eyes. His clothes were torn. His hands trembled. He looked at her like a man dying of thirst staring at a river. I knew you'd come, he said. They told us you were dead. But I knew. Lily reached forward, tears springing to her eyes. Ben. He nodded. Just once. Then the floor groaned behind him, and more footsteps approached. Alan raised the crowbar again, but Benjamin turned and said, No. It's okay. They're with me. We escaped together. From the shadows, 2 more figures emerged. A girl with Lucy's golden hair. Another boy with Sarah's piercing gaze. They looked frightened, exhausted, but alive. 3. Where was the 4th? Benjamin whispered they didn't all make it out. Lily's heart shattered. But before she could speak, her son stepped forward, voice shaking, but he's trying to find us. He's out there. And he's being hunted. They huddled in the shadow of the abandoned facility, the wind biting through their clothes as clouds rolled in overhead, turning the sky a bruised gray. Benjamin, Lucy, and Sarah, her babies, her blood, stood in front of Lily like ghosts called back from the dead. 20 years apart, yet something deeper than time connected them still. The way Benjamin watched over the others. The way Lucy leaned into Sarah when she trembled. These weren't children anymore. They were survivors. Lily's eyes remained fixed on Benjamin. Where's Daniel? Her voice cracked, the name coming out raw, desperate. Benjamin hesitated. He ran 3 months ago. We were hiding in an old church near Sioux Falls. Someone came looking. Not cops. Not social workers. Suits. Like the ones from when we were small. He sensed them before we did. Said he heard them in his dreams. His eyes glistened. He told us to run. Then he disappeared. Alan stepped forward. You think he's alive? Benjamin nodded. He's smart. Smarter than all of us. And faster. But they're watching everything now. Internet, phones, roads. They want to bring us back. Or worse. Lily's knees gave out and she sank into the weeds, clutching the photograph in her coat pocket as if it might hold the missing piece. How did this happen? She whispered. How could they do this to children? Sarah crouched beside her. They trained us like dogs. But it didn't work the way they thought. The stronger they pushed, the more we pushed back, together. We could feel each other. We still can. It's faint now, like static, but when we're close, like this, it comes back. Lucy added, they tried to break the link by separating us, but that only made us more dangerous. They don't understand what we are. They were scared. What are you? Alan asked softly. Benjamin looked directly into his eyes. Connected. Echoes of each other. We don't read minds. We remember emotions. Feel thoughts. It's like a ripple. You feel a wave before it hits you. Lily stood up again, every muscle tense. Then Daniel must be sending something. Anything. Sarah looked down. He's blocked. We think he's hiding himself even from us. We have to find him, Alan said. Before they do, they left the forest the next morning under a veil of rain. Benjamin had mapped out a few places Daniel might try to reach old hideouts from when they'd first escaped the program. The first one was near a train yard in Nebraska. They piled into Lily's car, cramped and quiet, navigating through backroads and avoiding highways, knowing every mile they drove brought both hope and danger. The train yard was deserted, rows of rusted boxcars stretching into the horizon. They found signs, burned-out matches, a pile of canned food buried beneath some leaves. Daniel had been there, but he was gone again. Lucy found a symbol scratched into the metal of one car. A perfect spiral intersected by 4 marks. That was ours, she said. We used it to mark safe zones. It means don't wait. Then he knew someone was close, Benjamin muttered. Probably left to keep us safe. The following night, they stopped in a rundown motel outside of a forgotten town in Iowa. Lily barely slept. The others took turns keeping watch. She awoke once to the sound of muffled sobs and found Lucy staring at a flickering television, watching a cooking show in silence, as if trying to pretend the world was still normal. At dawn, Lily turned to Sarah. Tell me about the others. The people who ran Aurora Echo. Sarah's face hardened. There was always a man. Not in uniform. Pale skin. Voice like ice. He never yelled. But when he walked into a room, we stopped breathing. They called him Overseer Rusk. But his real name isn't Rusk. We saw it once on a folder. Elias Monroe. Alan's eyes narrowed. That name was in the news years ago. CIA contractor turned rogue. He vanished after some scandal. People thought he was dead. He's not, Benjamin said. He's the reason Daniel ran. We saw Monroe again. In Sioux Falls. Watching from a crowd. Same face. Not aged a day. Like he found a way to preserve himself. A chill passed over Lily. What does he want with you now? Benjamin exhaled. What he always wanted. Control. He thinks if he reunites us, forces us to sync again, he can unlock something. Something buried deeper than what we remember. Alan stood. Then we moved fast. By the end of the week, they had tracked Daniel's last confirmed location to an abandoned library on the outskirts of Kansas City. A quiet, crumbling place that used to serve as a storm shelter. The inside was torn apart, mattresses, plastic water bottles, shredded clothes. On the wall was a message scrawled in red marker. I see you in my dreams. I'm close. Lily's heart broke at the words. Her son was reaching out. But he was still running. Suddenly, Lucy froze. He's near. Benjamin nodded, his voice barely audible. Yes, but something else is too. They exited the library just in time to see a black SUV pull onto the gravel path. Tinted windows. No plates. 2 men in gray suits stepped out, their movements surgical, fast. Run. Alan shouted. They scattered into the trees behind the building, ducking branches, hearts pounding. Gunshots cracked through the air, sharp, loud, intentional. Not to kill? Warning shots. They want us scared, Benjamin said as they moved. They want to break the link again. But this time, they were stronger. Lily tripped on a root and fell hard, her breath knocked out. The others stopped, circled around her. One of the men emerged from the brush, pistol raised. Then, just as his finger tensed, he froze. His eyes rolled back. He collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. From the trees behind him, a shadow stepped forward. Tall, lean, face partially covered in dirt and a torn scarf. Daniel, Lily gasped. He looked at her with eyes that seemed to glow in the dying light. I told you I'd find you. The reunion was brief. There was no time for tears. The second man turned and fled. Daniel didn't chase him. He'll report back, Daniel said, panting. We've got less than a day. Lily touched his face. We're together now. We'll fight. He looked at his siblings. We don't have to fight. Not like they expect. Benjamin's voice was a low whisper. You've seen it, haven't you? What we are. Daniel nodded. More than they ever knew. The air was electric with silence. The 5 of them stood there, Lily, Alan, and the reunited Quadruplets, beneath the twisted trees outside the crumbling library. Nobody spoke for a long moment. It wasn't the time for words. It was a time for breath, for the slow, aching realization that what was once shattered was slowly, impossibly, piecing itself back together. Daniel, the lost piece, the most elusive, stood before them, not a child anymore but something far beyond what a child should have ever become. There was wisdom in his stillness, and behind his dark eyes, a glimmer of something unearthly. Lily couldn't stop touching his face, her trembling fingers brushing over the faint scar on his cheek, the dirt on his brow, the strands of black hair falling over his eyes. "I thought I lost you forever," she whispered, her voice breaking, heavy with 2 decades of sleepless nights. Daniel didn't smile. His jaw tightened as he looked past her, scanning the horizon, listening for movement. They won't stop. The man in the shadows, he's not working alone. Monroe is building something. Something worse. Alan stepped forward. "We know about Project Aurora Echo." Daniel turned his head. "What they told you is only the surface. The truth is deeper. Darker. They didn't just train us. They harvested us." Benjamin flinched. "What do you mean?" Daniel finally looked at his brother. "They siphoned us. Monitored our brainwaves while we dreamed. Fed off our shared thoughts. We were an experiment, yes, but also a source. A generator. They recorded our linked emotions and sold the data to companies, to defense agencies. They built predictive models of human behavior from our pain." Lucy's face paled. "Like we were batteries." Daniel nodded. "Monroe's trying to recreate the bond with others now. New children. But he can't replicate what we are. We're the original. The purest version. And that's why he'll never let us go." A storm was gathering overhead. Clouds churned above like bruises in the sky. The air had the smell of electricity, the taste of something unfinished. "We need to disappear," Sarah said. "Drop off the grid again. Find a safe house. Regroup." But Daniel shook his head. "No. That's what they expect. We've been running our whole lives. Hiding. Scared. Separated. That's how they kept us weak. But if we stay together, if we stop hiding, we become something they can't control." Alan narrowed his eyes. "What are you suggesting?" Daniel looked straight at him. "We confront him. We go to Monroe. We shut it down, whatever he's building, before more children are taken." Lily grabbed Daniel's arm. "That's suicide." "No," he said softly, "it's closure." They spent the night at a remote cabin deep in the Missouri woods, a safe house Benjamin had once used during his time underground. There was no electricity, no signal, just oil lamps and the quiet hum of nature reclaiming the world outside. Lily barely slept. She kept staring at her children, grown now, all of them, but still her babies. How had the world turned so cruel, so monstrous, that it had taken them from cribs and turned them into fugitives? In the middle of the night, she found Daniel outside, sitting on a moss-covered log, staring at the moon through the branches. "Can't sleep?" she asked, her voice soft. He didn't look at her. "I haven't really slept in years. Not without seeing the labs. The wires. The other kids." Lily sat beside him. "You remember them?" Daniel nodded. "Some of them were just infants. Others not so lucky. There was one girl. Natalie. She was like us. Connected. Not to siblings but to pain. She absorbed it. Died during a test. They didn't even stop the stopwatch." Lily swallowed hard, tears burning her eyes. "I'm so sorry." He turned toward her finally. "I know you didn't stop looking. That's what got me through. I felt it. Like a whisper, like warmth under the floor. Every time I thought I'd break, I'd hear you humming." Lily choked on her sob. "I never stopped humming lullabies. I used to sit in the nursery and I hope maybe you could feel it." Daniel smiled faintly. "I could." The next morning, Alan and Benjamin had secured a name. A small research facility near Denver, technically a psychosocial rehabilitation center funded through a series of shell companies, all tracing back to a now-defunct front that Monroe had used in the 80s. "That's where he is," Daniel said as he looked at the documents Alan laid out. "I saw that place in a dream 2 weeks ago. He's gathering kids again." Sarah leaned over the table. "If we show up, he'll expect us." Benjamin added, "He might already know we're coming." "We want him to," Daniel said. "It's the only way to end this." They reached the outskirts of the Denver facility after nightfall. It was camouflaged as a private research retreat, surrounded by high-tech fencing and cameras. But the Quadruplets had their ways. Daniel hacked the cameras. Lucy and Sarah created a false delivery diversion. Benjamin slipped through a side door like he had done 100 times before. Inside, the building smelled of sterilized fear. Bright white corridors. Unmarked doors. The same suffocating silence that echoed the nursery of their youth. They split into pairs, Lily with Daniel, Alan with Benjamin, moving cautiously through the maze. Then came the sirens. Then came the lights. Red. Blinding. Alarms that echoed like screams. A voice crackled through the speakers, calm, deep, unmistakable. "Welcome home, children." Monroe. Daniel gritted his teeth. "He's here." As guards flooded the corridors, the siblings moved in perfect sync. It was like watching a dance. They dodged, diverted, tricked, escaped. They didn't attack. They didn't need to. Their bond was stronger than weapons. Lily and Daniel reached the main office, Monroe's sanctum. The door slid open before they even touched it. Inside, the man who haunted their nightmares stood, unchanged by time. Tall, immaculately dressed, cold eyes like polished stone. "Mrs. Carmichael," Monroe said, smiling. "Your children exceeded expectations." Lily stepped forward. "You're a monster." He chuckled. "I'm a visionary. I gave them purpose. You stole their lives. I gave them meaning. They were born special. I just shaped the future around them." Daniel stepped between them. "You lost, Monroe. We're together now." "That's your mistake." Monroe's smile faltered for the first time. "Together," he repeated, almost in disbelief. Then the walls began to shake, not with explosions, but with force. A wave of energy rippled through the facility. Lights flickered. Screens exploded. And Monroe's confident expression melted into one of horror. The siblings had connected. Fully. Without wires. Without drugs. By will alone. The entire building began to vibrate. Lily reached for her son's hand as the walls around them cracked. "What's happening?" Daniel's eyes glowed. "We're taking back everything." And then, darkness. Silence. Collapse. Smoke curled through the ruins like fingers, wrapping around shattered glass, bent steel, and the lifeless blinking of broken security lights. The facility had fallen silent, save for the occasional groan of a collapsing beam or the hissing pop of an exposed wire. What once had been a fortress of control, of inhuman experiments and clinical cruelty, now lay in fragments. Brought to its knees not by bombs or guns, but by the will of 4 souls bonded beyond comprehension. Lily awoke coughing. Her head throbbed, her lungs burned, and she couldn't see more than a few feet through the dust and smoke. "Daniel," she rasped, her voice breaking against the heaviness of the air. "Benjamin? Lucy?" Panic clutched her chest. "Sarah?" Then a hand on her shoulder. "It's me," said Daniel's voice through the haze. She turned and pulled him into her arms, not caring about the blood streaked across his temple or the soot in his hair. "Where are the others?" "Close," he said. "They stayed conscious longer. Helped push back the last wave. It overloaded the entire system. He didn't expect it." Lily looked around. "Monroe." Daniel's eyes darkened. "Gone. Not dead, just gone. He ran. Coward. Like always." "Then it's not over," Lily whispered. "No," he said. "Not yet." Minutes later, they found the rest. Benjamin limping but steady, Lucy supporting Sarah, who had a gash on her arm but still managed a crooked smile. The 4 of them stood together once again, framed by a building that could no longer hold them, the power that once bound them now shattered. Alan staggered toward them from the east wing, face smeared with dust and ash. "We have to move. Place is unstable. Might come down." But none of them moved immediately. Not until Sarah pointed at a metal cabinet flung open in the wreckage. Inside were files, hundreds of them. Paper. Real records, not digitized, not encrypted. Some labeled Synergy Replication. Others marked Phase 2, Cradle. Daniel stepped forward and pulled a stack of folders out, flipping rapidly through them. "It wasn't just us," he muttered. "They were creating new groups. Quads. Triplets. Even artificially induced pregnancies. Trying to manufacture bonds like ours." Benjamin looked over his shoulder. "Any names?" Daniel froze on one page. 6 in New Mexico. 3 in Sweden. One file marked, "In progress, Manila." His jaw clenched. They didn't stop. We were just the prototype. Lily took one of the folders. The photos inside were chilling. Toddlers in isolation rooms, infants hooked to wires, medical notes scribbled in cold, clinical language. One word kept recurring, echo children. Sarah whispered, "They're still doing it." "Monroe's not alone," Lucy added, voice sharp with rage. "There's more of them. A network." Alan nodded grimly. "And now they'll know we're still out here, and that you 4 are together again." For a long moment no one spoke. Then Daniel said, "We go dark." deeper than ever. But not to hide, to search. We find the children, the facilities. We tear this down one brick at a time. Lily looked at her son. You're not children anymore. No, Daniel said. We're what they feared we'd become. The days that followed were a blur of movement. They buried their trail, moved between contacts Marnie had left behind, reached out to old whistleblowers, and disappeared off every radar they could detect. They called it the Drift. A shadow network designed for people like them, people who'd seen too much and escaped the unthinkable. But as the family hid in safe houses and moved across states, something else began to happen. Sarah started waking up in the middle of the night with nosebleeds. Benjamin blacked out once in a motel bathroom. Lucy began hearing a high-pitched tone no one else could. And Daniel had started sketching symbols in his sleep, symbols they later found in the old Monroe files. Symbols the lab techs had claimed originated from Subject 1, a girl whose bond had been tested before them and had disappeared from the record entirely. She's alive, Daniel said one night in the back of an old barn outside Tulsa. She was the first. The original. Monroe called her the anchor. Without her, there wouldn't be an echo program. Lily rubbed his back, trying to soothe him. Who is she? She's the key, he whispered. To all of it. Meanwhile, whispers began circulating in intelligence circles. A black site facility had been destroyed. Files had gone missing. Surveillance had picked up traces of a psychic resonance never before recorded. A name kept appearing in old archives. Echo Prime. And one photo, Lily's family photo, was recovered from the wreckage, printed and passed through shadowy hands with urgency. For children, staring through time, burning with something no algorithm could explain. Somewhere across the country, in a government complex with no name, a figure in a lab coat placed a red folder onto a polished black table. He found them, the figure said. They're awake. All of them. A voice from the darkness replied, then initiate phase 3. Back in a small cabin hidden in the Pacific Northwest, Lily stood by the fireplace as rain pattered against the windows. Her children were asleep. Alan was keeping watch outside. She held the photo Daniel had drawn last, 4 silhouettes circling a fifth, a hollow space in the center. They want to find you, she whispered to the 5th silhouette. And we will. She tucked the paper into a journal. Then she closed her eyes and prayed. Not for safety, but for strength. Because the real war was just beginning. Came during a thunderstorm. A slow rumble rolled through the trees, shaking the windows of the cabin and setting the old wooden floorboards creaking like something breathing beneath them. Lily had just set a kettle on the stove when Alan appeared in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, his face pale. You need to see this, he said, holding up a sealed envelope. One with no stamp, no postmark, no return address. Lily's blood went cold. Not again. She took it in her hands slowly, heart thudding against her ribs like it wanted out. The envelope felt exactly like the first one. Same cream-colored paper. Same slanted handwriting. But this time, the name written on the front wasn't hers. It was Daniel's. He stood by the fireplace, arms folded, shirt soaked with sweat from one of his now regular episodes. Dream seizures, they had begun calling them. The others were close by. Sarah on the floor with a map of facility sightings, Benjamin pacing by the window, Lucy flipping through files that Marnie had left behind. But when Lily read Daniel's name out loud, everything stopped. She handed it to him. He didn't hesitate. His hands tore it open, his eyes scanning quickly. And then he sat down, hard, as if gravity had just tripled. What is it? Lily asked. He didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice so quiet it was almost not his, it's from her. Who? Daniel looked up, expression blank. The girl. The first. Subject 1. A sharp breath drew from Benjamin. The anchor. Daniel nodded. Her name is Elise. The letter was handwritten, but its tone was precise, controlled, almost unnervingly detached, like someone who had been observing the world through glass for too long. Daniel, you don't know me, but I know all of you. I remember your births, your bonds. They said you were special, but I always knew you were designed. I was the accident. You were the plan. He's not done. Monroe is trying to bring me back to the source. But he can't find me. I'm hiding inside the place where memories bleed. The past is not just memory. It's power. And we're tied by it. If you want to end this, find me before he does. But be warned, I am not what they think I am. And neither are you. E. They read the letter over and over again, turning every word into a code, a puzzle, a warning. Where memories bleed, Lucy said. That's not a metaphor. That's a location. Sarah spread out the maps. Could be the old Nevada site. The one with the basement built under the ruins of a town Monroe's people wiped off the map. It used to be called Weaver's Hollow. Alan furrowed his brow. That place was erased in the 60s. A test town for psychological warfare. Fake families. Real trauma. Benjamin tapped the letter. Then that's where she's hiding. And Monroe knows it. Daniel's voice was steel. Then we leave now. It took them 2 days to reach what remained of Weaver's Hollow. Nothing but dust and broken asphalt. A town that had been erased so thoroughly it didn't even register on satellite. The air felt heavy as they drove through its overgrown outskirts, past rusted street signs bent into the earth, through an old iron gate that once read Community First. Creepy, Lucy whispered. Lily held her breath as they exited the car. The wind here didn't whistle. It whispered. A constant hush, like secrets trying to be remembered. The sky was gray. Everything was gray. They followed Daniel, who moved without hesitation. There, he said, pointing to what remained of a library half collapsed, but its foundations still visible. She's beneath it. They descended into the darkness, flashlights cutting through layers of dust. The smell hit first, wet paper, scorched wires, mold. Then they saw the stairs. Not regular stairs, metal, spiraling downward, far deeper than any library should go. Benjamin stepped forward, his flashlight trembling. They built something under the town. Sarah finished for him. To store memories. Lily whispered, what kind of place stores memories? Daniel answered, one built to erase them. At the bottom, they found the chamber. Circular. Sterile. White walls covered in veins of circuitry. In the center was a chair surrounded by wires, some alive, some cut. Screens flickered with static. On the far wall, a single phrase etched in metal. All minds returned to the origin. And beside the chair, standing perfectly still, was Elise. She was tall, pale, with snow-white hair and dark, heavy eyes that looked like they hadn't blinked in decades. But she wasn't old. She was barely older than Daniel. And yet, in every line of her face, there was something ancient. Timeless. Like a soul stretched too thin. You found me, she said, her voice not echoing, not rising, but reaching. Lily stepped back instinctively. There was something off about Elise. Not dangerous, but unstable. Like an overloaded circuit. Daniel stepped closer. Why did you bring me here? Because he's coming, she said. He always follows the echo. But this time, I want him to find me. Benjamin narrowed his eyes. Why? Elise looked at each of them. Because I'm the lock, and you four are the key. Then the chamber lights shifted blood red. Elise didn't flinch. He's here. Above them, the facility doors burst open. And Monroe descended. The sound echoed down the stairwell before they saw him. Each step deliberate, precise, like a metronome of dread. Monroe's footsteps. Lily's breath caught as her mind flooded with memories. Of hospital rooms with no windows, of agents with cold stares, of a nursery gone empty. She reached for Daniel, but he was already moving forward, placing himself between Monroe and the rest of the group like a shield forged from 20 years of trauma. Monroe appeared in the doorway, flanked by 2 men in black, their faces expressionless, their movements almost mechanical. But it was Monroe who drew all the air out of the room. He looked untouched by time, the same pale skin, the same calculating eyes that had haunted Lily's dreams. Even now, standing before a chamber built to suppress minds, he looked utterly in control. I see the family reunion is complete, Monroe said calmly, his voice smooth like oil over water. Daniel, Elise, it's been a long road. Elise stepped out of the shadows, her eyes glowing faintly under the flickering lights. I told you never to come back here. Monroe smiled. And yet here you are, where it all began. The origin. Benjamin clenched his fists. What do you want, Monroe? Monroe walked in slowly, surveying them like pieces on a chessboard. The same thing I've always wanted. Balance. Understanding. Evolution. He turned to Lily. And closure for all of us. Lily stared him down. You're a thief. A coward. You ripped them from my arms and turned them into lab rats. I liberated them, he said coolly. From mediocrity. You think they would have become anything more than forgotten statistics in a small town? Look at them now. Look at what they've become. Daniel stepped forward. What we've become is in spite of you, not because of you. Monroe sighed. You still think this is about you? You're a data point, Daniel. One piece of a larger network. You four were never the end goal. You were the beginning. Elise raised her chin. And now we're the end. Something shifted in the air. The siblings stood shoulder to shoulder now. Something silent passed between them, a pulse. An invisible thread of connection tightening. Their breathing synchronized. Their eyes sharpened. They weren't four anymore. They were one. Monroe noticed it too. He tilted his head. You formed the full resonance, he said quietly. Fascinating. Daniel spoke, but it was as though all four of them were speaking with him. We're not afraid of you anymore. And we're not running. Monroe's two guards stepped forward, but Elise raised her hand. The air crackled. A low hum filled the chamber as the lights dimmed to near darkness. The guards froze mid-step, their eyes wide, limbs trembling. Then collapse. Silent. Sudden. Still trying to control things you don't understand, Elise said, staring Monroe down. But you've lost the script. Monroe's expression didn't break. On the contrary. I finally reached the part worth reading. He stepped to the center of the room, directly between them and the control panel behind the chair. You have no idea what this place really is, he said. This isn't just where we broke memories. It's where we stored them. Echoed them. This chamber can amplify the bond between you. But it can also invert it. Collapse it. A singularity. Lily stepped forward. You'd kill them before letting them be free. I'd give them a kind of immortality, he said coldly. A permanent imprint. For minds is one. Not just linked. Fused. You're insane, Alan growled. Elise turned to the others. We don't need the machine. We don't need his tech. We have each other. But Monroe moved suddenly fast. Too fast. He reached the panel, slamming a red switch. The chamber groaned. Lights turned from red to ultraviolet, casting strange shadows that danced like specters on the walls. No. Elise shouted. Daniel collapsed to his knees. So did Lucy. Sarah screamed, clutching her head. Benjamin staggered backward into the wall. What's happening? Lily screamed. Monroe stood calmly by the panel. Resonance reversal. I told you this was always bigger than you. We're not trying to connect you. We're trying to record you. Turn you into a living archive. Every thought, every emotion preserved. Stored. Forever. Elise stepped into the middle of the room and dropped to her knees, pressing her hands to the ground. The air rippled, literally rippled, as if space was being stretched thin. Then silence. The lights blew out. One by one. Then darkness. And in the dark, Lily heard it. Her babies. Laughing. But not as they were now. As they had been. Babies in a crib. Giggles. Gurgles. Then screams. Sharp. Loud. Overlapping with sounds of machinery, shouting, alarms. Memories. Not hers. Everyone in the chamber was still frozen. And then Lily understood. Monroe wasn't trying to kill them. He was trying to trap them. In memory. In a permanent feedback loop. Let the body decay, but keep the thoughts. Replay. Record. Replay. Record. Lily stepped into the center. No, she whispered. She reached for her children one by one. Hands on their shoulders. The bond touched her too. And it was terrifying. She saw everything. Every second of pain, isolation, cold rooms, electric shocks, whispered lullabies in sterile cells. But she didn't let go. She held them. And in that moment, she became the anchor. Something snapped. A pulse shot outward like thunder. The lights shattered. The walls cracked. And Monroe screamed, not from fear, but fury. He staggered backward, blood trickling from his ears. You have no idea what you've done, he spat. Elise stood again. I do, she said calmly. And she raised her hand. Light exploded from her fingertips. Not fire. Not electricity. Memory. Projected. Monroe's memories. Everyone saw them. The boardroom meetings. The backroom deals. The stolen children. The experiments. The deaths. The files burned. The names erased. All of it. Projected out like a movie onto the walls, onto the air, like ghosts vomiting the truth for the first time. Monroe collapsed, sobbing. And then Elise walked to him, knelt beside him, and whispered, now you live with our memories. She placed a single finger on his forehead. His eyes rolled back. And he went still. Not dead. Not broken. Just full. Of everything. The room went still. The echo stopped. And the chamber powered down. They climbed the stairs in silence. The dawn just breaking over the ruins of Weaver's Hollow. Daniel turned to Elise. What now? She looked at the sunrise. I vanish. Again. But I've sent your stories out. To the right people. The kind who don't mind shining lights into dark places. Benjamin asked. Will we ever see you again? She smiled. I think you already have. And just like that, she was gone. Back at the cabin days later, Lily watched her children sleep. Finally in peace. No alarms. No seizures. No whispers in the walls. Alan sat beside her, holding her hand. We still don't know what they are, he said quietly. She smiled, eyes glistening. They're mine. The road was cracked and narrow, barely visible on the outdated map Daniel had found buried in one of Elisa's recovered files. It wound through miles of nothing. Just flat plains, wind-tossed weeds, and distant hills like sleeping giants on the edge of the horizon. The town ahead wasn't marked on any GPS. There were no signs leading to it, no gas stations within 50 miles. And yet, there it was, exactly where Elisa's final coordinates had pointed. Nowhere, Kansas. Lily sat in the back seat of the old SUV with Lucy and Sarah, her hands nervously clutching a weathered manila envelope containing copies of Monroe's projected memories. Next to her, Benjamin was already scanning the area with narrowed eyes, alert for anything out of place. In the front, Alan drove in silence while Daniel held the map, a crease between his eyebrows like a line drawn in permanent ink. This can't be real, Sarah murmured. There's nothing out here. That's the point, Daniel replied. If you wanted to hide something forever, you wouldn't put it in a lab. You'd bury it under a forgotten town and wait for time to erase it. They rolled into nowhere just before sunset. It looked like it had been built from old memories, 1950s storefronts, gas pumps with rusted nozzles, a diner with a neon sign still flickering. There were cars parked in driveways, toys in front yards, even curtains in windows. But there were no people. Not a single one. Okay, this is officially creepy, Lucy muttered. Lily stepped out first. The air was dry and still, like the town was holding its breath. She approached the diner and peered inside. Plates were still on tables. Coffee cups half full. A radio behind the counter buzzed with static. They left in a hurry, Alan said, joining her. Or they never left at all. Daniel stepped into the street and closed his eyes. I feel something here. A residue. What kind? Sarah asked. He opened his eyes slowly. Psychic. Like an echo loop. Something was tested here. And it's still playing back. They walked down the main road in silence until they reached the town hall, a squat brick building with dusty glass doors. The lock was broken, the hinges rusted, but inside it was untouched. Papers on desks. Typewriters. A chalkboard on one wall with dates scrawled across it. October 3rd, 1969. October 4th, 1969. October 5th, evacuation. Lily picked up an old Polaroid left pinned to a corkboard. It showed a group of children standing outside a schoolhouse, their faces smiling but vacant, too. At the edge of the group stood a girl. Her features were hard to make out, but Lily's stomach dropped. Elise, she whispered. Benjamin looked over her shoulder. Then this town was her origin. Daniel paced the room slowly, then pointed to a trapdoor in the back hallway. Basement, he said. There'll be something down there. They always hid the tech underground. They descended into darkness, flashlights cutting through years of dust. What they found was impossible. Rows of beds, metal cots with restraints. Machines humming softly despite the age. A control station still blinking faint green. And on the far wall, a mural, hand-painted, childish, vibrant colors. It showed a giant spiral in the sky with 4 stars orbiting it. In the center, a 5th star glowing red. Another echo set? Lucy asked, her voice uneasy. No, Daniel said. This mural is decades old. The artist didn't know about us. Then Lily pointed to something below the mural. Words etched into the cement, faded but legible, we are the first. They will come next. The stars will burn. A silence fell over the room. Sarah whispered, this isn't just a test site. It was a prophecy. Daniel moved to the control panel and began pressing buttons. The screen flickered, old footage appeared. A young Elise strapped to a chair. Doctor speaking in hushed tones. She's responding. Memory is looping. External perception destabilized. Is she seeing us? No. She's seeing someone else. The screen cut to black. Then another clip loaded. It showed 4 children, barely toddlers, lined up behind a glass wall. Elise watched them, her hand pressed to the glass. She's connected to them. Already. How is that possible? Time is folding here. The bond crosses decades. Benjamin staggered back. They weren't just experimenting with minds. They were trying to link people across time. Lucy gasped. Daniel, that mural. The fifth star. That's not Elise. That's you. Daniel looked up at it. No, he said. It's someone else. Then the floor vibrated. Lights in the town above flickered. Alan grabbed his radio. We've got movement outside. 2 black SUVs. No plates. Lily's heart raced. They found us again. Daniel's voice was calm. No, they've been here all along. We just woke them up. Back on the surface, they spread out. Alan and Lily took cover behind the diner. Sarah and Lucy ducked behind the old gas station. Benjamin stayed at the edge of the library roof. Daniel stood alone in the street. 3 figures stepped from the SUVs. Not Monroe. Younger. Colder. One had a briefcase. The other 2 carried weapons. We're not here to kill you, the leader called out. We're here to make a deal. Daniel didn't move. The man opened the briefcase and held it up. Inside, a photo of 5 newborns. 5, not 4. The 5th child. Identical eyes. Identical bone structure. Lily's voice cracked in her earpiece. What is that? The man in the street said, The real Echo. You were only part of the experiment. Daniel stepped forward slowly. Who is he? The man smiled. We call him Subject Zero. You'll call him the one who ends all of this. Benjamin muttered under his breath. Another sibling? Sarah gasped. We were never the beginning. The man looked at Daniel. And unless you come with us, he will erase everything you are. The town fell silent again. Then Daniel said, Tell him, we're coming for him first. The SUV pulled away into the dust with the same eerie silence it had arrived, leaving behind nothing but tire tracks and a photo that refused to leave Daniel's hands. Back inside the town hall basement, the family circled the image as if it were sacred. 5 infants wrapped in white hospital blankets, each one tagged with identical initials, DC, but only 4 names ever listed in the records. The 5th baby, dark hair, wide eyes, same bone structure, was marked with a number, 0. Subject 0. Lucy sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, rocking slightly. It's not possible. We would have known. Felt him. No, Daniel said quietly, staring at the infant's face. That's the point. He was hidden from us. Sarah frowned. But why? Why go through all that trouble? Benjamin exhaled slowly. Because he's not like us. He's more. Alan stared at the photo, arms crossed. If he's the original, the prototype, maybe he was too powerful. Maybe they separated him on purpose before the bond formed. Lily's hands were trembling. Then they raised him differently. Trained him in silence. He never had what you had each other. Daniel nodded. Which means they turned him into a weapon. For the next 2 days, they combed through the rest of the files Elise had led them to. The town itself became their operations hub, eerily preserved but lifeless. Sarah pieced together timelines from faded charts, Lucy hacked into abandoned terminals scattered beneath the schoolhouse, and Benjamin scouted the outskirts, confirming surveillance equipment that was still, shockingly, active. Every path led back to one location, a remote facility hidden beneath an inactive military installation in northern Utah, codenamed Citadel Gray. It was the last known site associated with something called Project Subroot, an extension of Echo. Files indicated that Subject Zero had been moved there permanently in 1982 after a containment breach at Aurora Echo Phase 1. Daniel stared at the maps in the candlelight. He's been there this whole time. Sarah asked quietly, what if he doesn't want to be found? Daniel looked up. Then we'll show him what it means to be. The drive to Utah was long and tense, the group avoiding major roads, rotating vehicles, and using burner phones to stay under the radar. The closer they got to Citadel Gray, the more unease settled in Lily's chest like lead. Her children were powerful, resilient beyond anything she could imagine, but this was different. This wasn't about escape anymore. It was confrontation. With the ghost of a sibling they never knew they had. With a project that had reached beyond human understanding. They reached the outer perimeter just before dawn. From the outside, Citadel Gray was unremarkable. A few cement outbuildings, overgrown fencing, a rusted sign half buried in weeds. But beneath it, hidden under 200 feet of reinforced concrete, lay the vault. The records were clear. Subject Zero hadn't left in over a decade. He's down there, Daniel said, staring at the reinforced hatch beneath the main structure. And he's awake. I can feel it. Lucy looked up at him. How do we even talk to him? We don't, Sarah replied. We connect. Like we always do. Benjamin exhaled. Then we go in together. Inside, the citadel was cold. Sterile. Dead almost. Like time had stopped. But the deeper they went, the warmer it became, not physically but mentally. The echoes of something alive moved through the corridors. Thoughts that weren't theirs. Whispers that didn't belong. They reached the containment vault at level -5. A massive door, thick and rusting at the edges. No keypad. No biometric scanner. Just a handprint scanner embedded in the wall, and above it, one word etched in steel. Root. Daniel stepped forward, unsure why, but his hand moved naturally. He pressed his palm to the panel. It glowed, and the door hissed open. Inside was a chamber with a single bed in the center. And sitting on that bed, hands folded neatly, was a man. Maybe 29. Maybe 35. Hard to say. He looked like them. Same jaw. Same eyes. Same echo behind the expression. But his presence was heavier, his stillness more deliberate. He looked up as the door opened. I wondered how long it would take, he said. Lily stepped inside cautiously, flanked by Alan and Sarah. The man stood slowly, his eyes locking onto Daniel's. You're Daniel, he said. The speaker. Daniel blinked. You know me? He nodded. I felt you for years. You were loud when you were scared. But you stopped screaming eventually. That's when I knew you were becoming whole. Benjamin's voice was hard. Who are you? The man turned his head slowly. I'm what came before. I'm the root system. I held the pains so you could grow. Lucy stepped forward. You're our brother. He smiled, but there was no joy in it. I was your prototype. You have a name? Lily asked. The man tilted his head. I did. Once. But they stripped it away. I became the mirror. That's what Monroe called me. The one who would hold everything. So you wouldn't have to. Daniel's jaw clenched. We're not here to fight you. I know. But we can't let them use you anymore. The man looked down at his hands. I was never meant to leave this place. I was built to absorb. To carry. My thoughts were poisoned with the minds of others, failures, fragments, pain. All of it. Do you know what happens when you carry the memories of 1,200 lost children? Silence. Then he looked up, and for the first time, there was emotion in his voice. You forget who you are. Lily stepped closer. You're not a weapon. But I was trained like one, he said. They used me to locate the rest. I saw you all through machines. Heard you in my sleep. I thought, maybe if I let them win, I'd finally be empty. Daniel's voice softened. You don't have to carry it anymore. But I do, he said, eyes flickering. Because I'm the failsafe. Benjamin tensed. Failsafe for what? The man raised a hand, and the entire chamber shifted. Not physically, but in perception. They were suddenly surrounded by floating projections, like memories suspended in glass. Faces, screams, data, experiments. It was everything Monroe ever did. Every lie, every crime, stored inside one mind. You see, the man whispered, I'm the final key. You destroy me, and the whole ecosystem collapses. All data lost. Forever. No evidence. No redemption. Sarah's voice cracked. Then what's the alternative? Take it, he said. Take all of it. Spread it. Share it. Break the link. Make the world see. Daniel stepped forward. And what happens to you? The man smiled gently. Then I sleep. The chamber darkened, and the bond began. One by one, the siblings touched his hands. The room lit up with impossible energy, light, sound, memory folding into memory. Lily stepped back, watching as her children and the brother she never knew she had shared pain not just to survive, but to heal. And when it was done, the man, Subject Zero, collapsed onto the bed, breathing shallow but peaceful. And for the first time, in the corner of his mouth, a smile. The press conference wasn't held in Washington or New York or even LA. It was a rented room in a neutral city somewhere no one important was supposed to be. And yet, by the time the first file hit the encrypted press drop, the world had already begun to tremble. It started as a leak. Medical reports from defunct labs, footage from the Citadel's underground, Monroe's voice recorded in secret meetings, lists of names, children taken, families erased. The material was raw, brutal, and undeniable. Then came the interviews. Scientists with heavy eyes and heavier guilt, former techs who whispered about what they'd seen, even a retired senator who, on camera, admitted that something inhuman had been authorized under the pretense of national defense. And then the world stopped laughing at the word echo. Lily watched it unfold from a safe house in Oregon, a cabin wrapped in trees so dense it felt like the world couldn't find them there. Her children sat beside her, silent, eyes locked on the screen as every anchor in every language repeated the same words. Echo Project confirmed. Mindlink experimentation on minors. The secret sibling theory. Elise's data dump had worked. Subject Zero's memories, encoded and uploaded, created a psychic chain of revelation. The world didn't just read the truth, it felt it. Witnesses everywhere spoke of sudden flashes of forgotten faces, unfamiliar sadness, voices in dreams. Benjamin switched channels. One showed the doors of a once-abandoned facility being pried open by federal agents in hazmat suits. Another showed a child reunited with a mother who had thought him dead for 15 years. Lucy leaned forward. They're waking up. All of them. Sarah was crying. She didn't wipe the tears. They're finally being seen. Daniel stood and stepped outside, needing air. The forest was quiet. Wind rustled the pine needles, and for the first time in months, it sounded like peace, not warning. He stared up at the sky. Behind him, footsteps. Lily joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist like she used to when he was 10 and too scared to sleep without her. You okay? She asked. I don't know, he said. We did it. But it doesn't feel over. She rested her chin against his shoulder. Because it's not. Truth doesn't stop them. But now they can't hide in the dark. Daniel nodded slowly. He's still out there, you know? Monroe, she asked. No. Subject 1. The original failure. The one who broke before Elise. She's still a ghost in their system. We never found her. Lily's breath hitched. I thought. She was just a myth. She's real, Daniel said. And she's fractured. Somewhere out there, there's a girl, maybe grown by now, who was the first to carry this weight. She may have gone completely silent. Or worse. She's still broadcasting. Inside, Alan appeared in the doorway. You need to see this. They followed him in. On the screen was a new report. Not Echo. Not Citadel Gray. A school in Ukraine. Another in Colombia. A child found speaking fluent Japanese despite being raised in rural Iceland. Unconnected kids. Different parts of the world. But all drawing the same symbol over and over. A spiral with 5 stars. Daniel went pale. That's her, he whispered. She's bleeding through. Lucy pointed at the screen. These aren't experiments. These are receivers. They're picking up her signal. Sarah said what none of them wanted to say aloud. She's not lost. She's active. Lily grabbed the envelope Elise had left behind. Inside was a page no one had understood before, a single word scrawled over and over. Rootless. Now it made sense. Subject 1 had never been anchored. She had no siblings. She had nowhere to reflect her pain, no echo to divide the burden. She had absorbed everything. Daniel's mind spun. That's why Monroe was so desperate to bond us. To control what she couldn't. Benjamin said quietly, then we have to find her. Before she finds the others. They all turned to Lily. Her face was calm. Focused. Then we go, she said. Not to hide. Not to run. We search. The way we should have from the beginning. Weeks later, footage would surface of 4 figures boarding a plane under alias passports. Surveillance would trace them through European backroads, mountain towns, isolated labs thought long abandoned. Everywhere they went, whispers followed. Lights that flickered when they passed. Clocks that stopped ticking. Children that stopped crying and simply stared as they walked by. They weren't ghosts. They were legends now. The Echo siblings. But legends have enemies. And someone somewhere was still listening. In a dark room thousands of miles away, a girl sat on a hospital bed, eyes staring at nothing. Machines beeped softly around her. A nurse adjusted an 4 without looking at her. On a screen above her bed, symbols danced. Brainwave scans. Frequency spikes. Then, just for a moment, her eyes glowed faintly. A whisper filled the room. Not in English. Not in sound. but in thought. I remember you, Daniel. And then she smiled. The storm came at midnight. Over the Irish coast, lightning forked across the sky as the private jet dipped into sudden turbulence. Daniel sat by the window, his face reflected against the black glass, watching the unnatural glow pulse in the clouds like the sky was thinking. Not storming, thinking. The atmosphere crackled in rhythm. Sarah sat across from him, headphones in, lips moving silently as she repeated the phrases Subject Zero had whispered before falling unconscious. Lucy sat with a laptop open on her knees, eyes scanning encrypted forums and intelligence threads, all repeating the same impossible story. 13 children in 12 countries had simultaneously collapsed at 3:03 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Each of them unrelated, unaffiliated, but every one of them had drawn the same spiral with 5 stars before blacking out. The signal had begun, and it was stronger than anything they'd ever encountered. Benjamin paced in the aisle, his fists clenched. She's calling them. Lily sat near the back, eyes closed in quiet prayer. Not for safety anymore, but for mercy for whoever might still stand in Subject One's path. Because now they knew her name. Mira. They landed in a rain-soaked airfield just outside a forgotten village in Western Ireland. No customs. No questions. A contact from Elisa's network was waiting with a black SUV and a satellite phone that kept blinking red. She's 4.2 kilometers inland, the woman said. But the signal's unstable. Interference is growing stronger every hour. What kind of interference? Daniel asked. The woman hesitated. The kind that makes grown men cry without knowing why. The cottage sat on the edge of a cliff, wind lashing its stone walls, roof sagging from time. But the lights were on. Faint. Steady. Inside, the air was electric. Every breath tasted like metal. Furniture was overturned, books peeled apart like petals, mirrors shattered into patterns that made no sense unless you stepped back and listened with your eyes. They found her on the floor. A girl, maybe 28, kneeling in a circle of drawn symbols. Her hair long and unwashed, her hands trembling but steady. Her eyes, when they opened, weren't glowing. They were blank, as though sight itself had been swallowed by memory. She looked up as they entered. Daniel, she said. You came late. He froze. You know me? I am you, she whispered. Or what you would have been if you were alone. Lucy stepped forward. Mira, you're not alone now. We found each other. You don't have to carry this anymore. Mira shook her head slowly. You don't understand. I'm not sending the signal. I'm receiving it. Sarah's breath caught. From where? Mira smiled, and for the first time it wasn't sad. It was terrified. From what comes after. The sky outside dimmed unnaturally. Clouds twisted into spirals. The wind screamed in voices. Not English. Not any language. A universal ache that dug into bone and thought. Benjamin stepped to the window. She's not the end. Daniel nodded. She's the messenger. The symbols Mira had drawn on the floor began to glow. Violet, blue, red. Not with light but with memory. Snippets flashed in the room. Children in white rooms, faces distorted, hands pressed to glass. The smell of antiseptic and ash. Daniel dropped to his knees beside Mira. You have to break the link. Shut the gate. I can't, she said. It's not a gate. It's a mirror. And we're all looking into it now. The room began to shake. Then stillness. All sound dropped away. And Mira whispered, They want to come through. Lily moved forward, tears in her eyes. Who? Mira didn't answer, but the spiral on the floor pulsed. Once, twice, and then Mira collapsed. Daniel caught her just before she hit the ground. The house exploded with sound. Not from outside, but from inside their heads. They saw cities folding in on themselves, waves of light cutting across oceans, children waking in sweat speaking in equations. They saw the future, not made by machines but by memory, collective, traumatized, amplified, and in the center of it all, the rootless child, Mira. When it ended, dawn had broken. Mira lay unconscious but breathing. The signals had stopped. Sarah checked her vitals. She's alive. And she's clean. The frequencies are gone. Benjamin collapsed into a chair, exhaling. It's over. Daniel didn't move. He looked at the horizon where the sun broke through clouds. No, he said. It's just changed. Lucy asked gently, what do we do now? Daniel turned to all of them. We help them remember. Lily stepped forward, wrapping her arms around all 4 of her children. Then let's go home. Weeks passed. Then months. Mira was transferred to a secure recovery facility where she began drawing again. No spirals now, just faces. Children. People she'd seen but never met. She never spoke much, but she smiled more. The world tried to move on. Whistleblowers flooded the net. Echo became the subject of hearings. International oversight committees were formed. The siblings testified, once cloaked behind dark glass. And then they vanished again. Not into hiding. Into purpose. They formed something new. A foundation. Not a charity. A network. To find others. To train them. To help them carry their echoes instead of being destroyed by them. The world didn't need protection from memory. It needed reconciliation with it. Years later, a woman sat in a room full of light. Children laughed in the next room. A voice called out, Miss Lily. She turned and smiled at the young staff member. Yes. There's a new arrival. The boy was 11. His eyes sharp. His voice quiet. And he had drawn a spiral on his intake form. Lily knelt before him and took his hand. Welcome, she said. You're not alone anymore. And the boy smiled like he finally believed it.